Welcome back to the Audible Angle. As always, we record live with no edits, and as always, we're moving quick, concisely moving from topic to topic. If I start talking too long, Herbs cuts me off, which he failed to do in our episode posted this morning on the Packers and Ravens destruction and depression. Good thing we're moving on today. We're on to another one of our favorite topics, and we might move into, some might consider this gambling topics, but it's really a college football breakdown of sorts. And in order to do that, in addition to Herbs and myself, we brought in, if you're watching on video, you saw them already, our preferred demographic that Herbs mentioned before of mainly female and 30 and under, 30 to 18, and then 60 to 85. Those are two demographics for females. They'll love to see what they're looking at today. We welcome fellow Division I athlete, fellow studious attention to detail guy, and fellow guy who's past his athletic prime, perhaps. Ryan Andrews. We'll call him Druzy most of the day. Welcome to the podcast. You're a big fan of the show. How many hours do you spend watching the Audible Angle, with family and friends per week?
First of all, glad to be with you guys and definitely getting into the Audible Angle. I've tried to stream it in the vehicle a couple times, so not so much with the video yet, but definitely looking forward to maybe catching up on a couple episodes and hopefully being on a few more future episodes with you guys.
We brought you in. Herbs has hyped you a little bit as a guy who not only knows a little bit about college football and college sports in general, also a master of mascots across all levels of collegiate sports. Is that something from the past? Is Herbie digging deep there, or is that a thing you're pretty confident about?
That is true. I would say that used to be true. I think I used to challenge people. You got the long bus rides, and they would just literally throw these random colleges at me. And for whatever reason, I was able to maintain that stupid information. I don't know if I still have it. Probably pretty safe with like the 123 or whatever Division I college football teams we're at right now. But I think if you expanded it to the whatever we're at, 360 some Division I men's basketball teams, that might start to look ugly after a while. Or random questions like, who's the Division III men's lacrosse champion? Lenore Ryan or whatever, happened to be that year.
We're going to go a little off script here. I know we normally stick to a pretty strict script. I don't know why I'm leaning in so close today, but apologies to the viewers of the close facials. Druzy, this little teaser for the episode that'll post after this, Stag Bowl, Division III football championship. We got the UW River Falls Falcons. They're facing North Central, whose mascot is?
You're going to get me on that one.
It's not as good as a Falcon.
Not as good as the Falcons, which are, that's right in my backyard. So we're obviously rooting for the Falcons here.
It's not as tough as a Falcon.
Yeah. Think a weaker bird also could be found in your backyard.
Also
Robin?
Yeah.
Oh, Cardinal.
Yeah. Cardinal. That'd be kind of cool if they're the Robins. I wonder if there's a team out there that is called the Robins.
Anago High School, the Red Robins.
Really?
Anago, yep, Red Robins here in Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, kind of halfway in between.
Been through it many times. Yeah, been through it many times on the way to the Irby Cottage.
Yeah, Anago actually finished my junior year in high school, season sectionals finals. Guest that we're going to have on, that will be a topic of discussion with Mr. Kane, our Carthage resident athletic director. He does not, every time I see him, he does not let me forget about the fact that I dribbled off my foot in the closing seconds while I was going in for a layup, which then ended his career in high school. You're welcome.
We are going to focus on the bigger schools today, the Division I. We're also a Division III program. Not to overhype our Stag Bowl episode coming up. It's probably our best ever episode. People are saying it. The production crew's been working on it, and it's all gold. The problem is it's so much gold they don't even know how to edit it because there's nothing to edit out like our normal episodes. But so we got to specify Division One collegiate football. Druzy, you're a man who legally makes wagers and oftentimes drives an hour and a half to another state in order to engage in legal sports betting, so you don't have to mix in everything. I was originally, you don't have to mix in a spread angle on every game, but please feel welcome to. What I was going to go in order, but let's just go with what do you think is the highlight matchup of the four playoff games? I guess it'd be quarterfinals that we have. I'll list them off quick. Miami versus Ohio State, Oregon, Texas Tech, Bama, who many thought maybe shouldn't even be in this thing, at Irby's favorite team, Indiana, and then Ole Miss, no Lane Kiffin versus we're always here, Georgia Bulldogs. What catches your eye right off the top as, man, I'm not sure what to think about this matchup?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's some juicy matchups here. I know some people were ticked off about how the playoff selection went down, Notre Dame, and should James Madison get in? But like this quarterfinal's pretty stacked. I love the Oregon Texas Tech game. I can't wait for that one. I actually personally love Texas Tech. Like when you look at the results during the year, other than one hiccup against Arizona State when they weren't fully healthy, and they played at Arizona State when Arizona State was actually fully healthy for one of the few times this year. And if you look at Texas Tech's results, they are pretty impressive. And now they have their quarterback. Baron Morton is back to 100% for the first time in like a long time. And it's weird to say this, but Texas Tech's defense is pretty legit. Like Jacob Rodriguez, David Bailey. They got some studs on defense, and then Oregon's Oregon, so they got great athletes too. So I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
Well, that's interesting because you kind of start off with liking a dog. Now this is not an official pick, but Texas Tech in Vegas and the line setters out there, they have them as an underdog. I'd say the general public also would think of Texas Tech. Oregon's been there. Oregon's been part of the playoffs. They've been on the rise for their brand in college football. And Texas Tech, I think we joked about it once. First thing I thought of didn't Bobby Knight end up there coaching basketball at one point after Indiana? That's like the last time I thought about Texas Tech very seriously before this year.
Mac McClung, good dunker.
Yeah, and they had a good run here. Just what 3-4 years ago? Was that the Virginia? Was that the Tony Bennett championship? Yep. Was that against
Final
Texas
Four.
Tech, Irby?
Yeah, Final Four. Yep.
Is Texas Tech, as an avid listener of the show, which I know you were kind of shy, you didn't want to admit how much you listened. Irby's stance on Cignetti at Indiana, and kind of we talked about it a lot on our preview, in the first round of matchups, how Indiana is, it's really a culture change there. It's that we like them as a, hey, we're going to be around for a while. Would you say Texas Tech has have they established that kind of foundation, or does this feel perhaps a little bit more like a one-year deal than it does in Indiana?
No, I agree with you, Dilly. They recently, and I'm going to forget the cat's name, but, another one of those schools that was able to lasso a big donor to contribute to their athletic department. And, in today's college game, that's going to go a long way. In fact, if you look at a lot of the guys on their team and you talk about like bringing in David Bailey and paying some of these guys. So I think, Texas Tech could be on the map for real. Especially in that conference. Not trying to downgrade the Big 12, but I don't think it's quite the SEC or the Big 10. And I think with the resources that Texas Tech has and, the recruits just right in the backyard there in Texas, I think the sky's the limit. It wouldn't be surprising to see them kind of hanging around the top 10, 15 year after year.
Dilly, it's kind of I'm going to ask a real quick question here of Druzy because there's some similarities in some of the things we've talked about on some previous podcasts. Druzy, little known fact, is actually related to Matt LaFleur in his vanilla answers to questions that Dilly gives, because Matt LaFleur and Druzy just give vanilla answers. Hey, Druzy, what's the game that you're looking forward to? Boy, oh boy, it's a shocker he's going to the 4 or 5 seed. Boy, that's what going off the limb there, Drew. Thanks for the
Well,
in-depth.
the other one's the 6-3 game. So if you want to talk about that one, we can talk about that one next.
Well, we will.
It was probably a toss-up, so maybe I should have led with that one. But for some of the reasons Dilly mentioned, but anyway.
It took me 10 minutes to give you shit, and you're welcome for that.
That's
first
9.5 minutes longer than I thought it was going to be, so I appreciate that, buddy.
There's like a couple old ladies here.
I'll follow up on Dilly's question, though. I do, in a previous episode, we also talked about Indiana being a basketball school that is now kind of transitioning into the football. Is Texas Tech, in your opinion, in a similar transition? I mean, we didn't really see them on the map, if you will, on the top tier. They're not a Georgia, they're not a Bama, they're not a Notre Dame, those type of schools that have always been there. They're not a Miami. They're not an Ole Miss, so is this a basketball school that's trying to transition into big time football?
I think so, and I think that's the plan, right? That's so much of your revenue, especially for a school like that. But I think again they found a home in that conference. I think it fits them perfectly, and the conference is getting stronger. Like, I mean, you got Arizona in there, you got Kansas State, you got Arizona State. Both those Arizona programs have been much improved over the last couple of years. Iowa State's usually pretty good, so it's a good conference. And yeah, I agree with you, Herbs. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to see them hanging around the top 10, year after year, barring any. Of course, how long can they keep their coach, right? I don't know how much you guys have covered that, but can you keep Kurt Signetti at an Indiana? The movement and transfer portal, who knows, right? Changes are limitless.
Yeah, I've got a question, and I've got to I want to get both of your insights here, because Oregon being in the Big Ten, all of us probably have watched Oregon more than once this year. Maybe not in other parts of the country, but in our Big Ten country that we all reside in, Oregon gives me question marks because I've seen them in games, and quite frankly, when they played Wisconsin held with them for the first half and into the third quarter. And Wisconsin was not a good football team, is not a good football team, is not currently a good program. So that gives me questions, and I'm not as familiar, Druzy, Dilly, with Texas Tech's offense, but if this is a game where Oregon gets out to a slow start, which they've done more than once in the season, is this a team that can come back? I know in years past they've been very strong offensively. I know they've got a good quarterback. I know their running back is pretty strong as well. But is this something that if they don't get started fast with Texas Tech, are they going to have a chance?
Dilly, you want to take it?
Well, I will just say, not a huge revelation here, but the Oregon team that you're thinking of is different now. I think this season, and maybe for a little bit, they're not beating teams 53-6 and 53. They play a little more defense, and I don't know enough about the program myself. That's why we get a guy like Druzy on who will just fill us in. But if that was, they had to adjust to playing in the Big Ten and trying to not be a team that beats the crap out of the bottom of the Big Ten and then can't hang with the top of the Big Ten. I don't know if it was a conscious adjustment or just a factor of the teams they play and them trying to find a way to win. But they are more defense orientated, a little bit more of a controlled game, and they've that Wisconsin game, I think a lot of people probably watched that one. It was closer, but it didn't feel like they were in danger much, and I'd imagine a lot of their season was a bit more like that than maybe Oregon fans were used to in the past.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Herbs, and I agree with Dilly too, because like the Wisconsin game, those games bother me. They were in a little bit of trouble. Now Washington's a little bit more quality opponent, but that was in question until midway through the fourth quarter. We were all excited about Oregon when they went to Happy Valley and they beat Penn State. And as the season went on, that didn't become nearly the win that it was. And so to your point, Herbs, If Texas Tech gets out early, it could be in trouble because I think Dilly's right. It's weird. Oregon's defense is improved, and Oregon's always going to have athletes, but I'm not sure they have quite the firepower. I mean, Dante Moore's awesome as a quarterback, but like I'm not sure that they're as equipped to, if they fall down 14-0, for example, crawl back into something when you normally think of Oregon, right, that they can go up and down the field. Not saying they can't, but especially against Texas Tech's defense, who again I really really like.
Really hit the alarm. I think we've got an upset alert here. This is an upset alert in the first game that Jersey chooses to look at. Are we in agreement that Texas Tech is maybe they're not the favorite here? But on this call in the audible angle, this episode, I think, at least I believe they're the favorite to win this game.
I'm checking my resources here quick, which I probably won't get to soon enough. I know for a couple stretches of the season, Oregon was missing some of their firepower at receiver. So, before we drive in the final nail on Oregon's chances here, there is, without diving into a bigger topic, in college sports, you don't get the injury updates. You don't get the information that you do in the NFL. So it gets harder to really determine what's happening and who's going to play. And of course, you get opt-outs and all that stuff, which shouldn't be happening, although it has a little bit before, even for playoff teams. But you get into that whole thing where when we haven't watched every Oregon game or followed them closely all year long, that could be a bit of a factor to consider with their offensive stagnation. Is if I believe they were down multiple receivers for some stretches, and you get a couple weeks off and you show up and it's like, wow, here's that team that we thought we were going to see, the old Oregon.
Well, I just, Jersey, I look back at their game on December 20th against James Madison, who we all kind of agree was maybe an overmatched squad in that game. And there's questions, we don't have to rehash here, but there's questions if they should have even been in the top 12. They were there. The score of that game was 51-34. It wasn't as though, I mean, quite frankly, as far as Oregon games go in the past and some of the other games, if you looked at them outside of the A&M Florida game, which we kind of all knew was going to be a tight game to begin with, as long as Miami played well, that's a pretty tight game for all intents and purposes that we needed to see. So does that kind of give you a glimpse of what may happen in this game as well?
It is too, and if we've all seen Oregon, they have no problems putting up 63 or 70 on somebody. Like, it's very rare they take their foot off the gas. And so to your point, the game probably wasn't quite that close, but James Madison, I just think the overall just feel of the game was that, for the most part, Oregon was better, but James Madison kind of hung around for the better part of the game.
Let's not do our official picks yet, our official upset picks, our official spread picks. We can kind of circle back around at the end. And if we're okay to move on here, it is the second game you mentioned, and frankly, it's probably the net.
One last point, if I can. I just want to
call an audible. You got to call an audible.
Oh, can.
Okay.
Can. What are you doing? Get over here. Can. Sorry, that was a little Aaron Rodgers for everybody that's
he
listening.
thinks he's Rodgers sometimes.
Gotta just state, is this a game that's Big 12 versus Big 10? I mean, are we looking big picture? Is this kind of a measuring stick of who the better conference is? I mean, there's other games here. Indiana, that game could be SEC, Big 10. There's always those questions. What conference is best? Is this the best represent? I know Indiana's the best representation out of the Big 10 this year, obviously number one seed. But is this a good litmus test for the conferences to say, hey, this conference is stronger and maybe deeper?
Yeah, I think 100% Herbs, because if you look at it, Big 10 has 3 teams in there. Texas Tech is the Big 12 representative, and so I think it's the big, Texas Tech is going to want to represent the Big 12. And to your point, what's the depth play? Is how does Oregon compare to Ohio State and Indiana, right? So, it's going to be a great measuring stick. Should be a great game.
Sorry about that audible, Dilly. You're back on to normally scheduled planning.
Back on to playing 3rd and 1 like it's 3rd and 12. Georgia, Mississippi, I mean, 2 SEC teams matching up. That's automatic intrigue. You got Lane Kiffin, coaching against nobody because he's not coaching anymore. I've kind of targeted Ole Miss as a team that I thought would be the type of team that would play with a chip on their shoulder. They have a lot at stake as individuals, with the coaching change and kind of the everything surrounding that. But the fact of the matter is, they didn't beat Georgia. They already played Georgia, and they didn't beat them. Is there anything reason to believe it's going to be that much different? Do you have optimism for Ole Miss as a dog, or what are you expecting in this matchup?
Yeah, I think Ole Miss has a great chance to win. I'm not sure I'm picking them yet. We'll wait till your official pick segment, as you said, Dilly. But there's so many things at play in this game. There's the Lane Kiffin piece, right? I feel like Ole Miss is going to be fired up. Maybe they've thrown their support behind the current head coach. And to your point, the earlier matchup was in Athens, and for anyone that watched that game, Ole Miss was in control of that game for about 3/4. They were able to go up and down the field. I forget what the yardage was in the fourth quarter. It was 115 yards for Georgia and 2 for Ole Miss. So Georgia kind of got hot at the end and pulled it out, but Ole Miss showed that they belong. They've got some great athletes, like that kid Trinidad Chambliss, quarterback, he's fantastic. And Ole Miss has some good skill position players. I think what's interesting is Georgia has played some really good defense over the last 3 or 4 months. So interesting to see how, that matchup is going to be. But I certainly give Ole Miss a chance, especially at a neutral site with all the factors. And it's always interesting to see, Georgia's been off now for a couple weeks. Ole Miss was able to go out and, throw a whooping on Tulane, whatever it was, a week and a half ago. And so that's another factor, right? So, I think so many interesting factors and different things that could happen with this game. It'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Little flashback for myself, even as I glance over at the computer screen here. That game, the Georgia Ole Miss game, was all the way back on October 18th. And if you'd put me on the spot to guess when that was, I would have guessed it was in the last 2 weeks of the season. There's some more distance between that game and, several weeks later, Georgia had the big matchup with Texas. They had the big matchup with Alabama. Even Georgia Tech was ranked when they played them. And so they had, they stayed in your mind a little bit more than Ole Miss. Ole Miss, as I look at the schedule here, they beat Oklahoma the next week. And then after that, any SEC game, South Carolina, Florida, those are all games, but they mixed in a Citadel in there. It's you kind of snooze.
Schedule kind of dropped off a little bit towards the end there, to your point, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, your last memory of them in a big game that was probably nationally televised and holding your attention is back at the end of October against Oklahoma. So the perception that Georgia-Ole Miss matchup, like you said, in Athens, holds a ton of weight was maybe I purposely misguided myself so I could make this point later. Maybe it's part of the show. Maybe it's in the script. Maybe I'm dumb.
Yeah, I think, at least on the intrigue level, Drew, I understand why you kind of are focused on that 4-5 matchup. But as far as intrigue and second chances go, and good television, if you will, this game has it all, right? They're familiar with each other. There's a rivalry there. They see each other basically every year. In the SEC, I think every team plays everybody, right? And in the SEC.
They come close, but not anymore with just the recent additions of so many teams. But yes, they get a little bit more of a look. Well, in the Big Ten for sure. But
hey, Dilly, I'm going to fill a little time. I glance at the ticker, at the NFL ticker. There may be some updates that you want to mention on the show here that are coming through. I didn't get a clear picture of it. But I do think that this game itself, Drew, is bound to be the closest game. I don't know what your thoughts are there as far as the spread and such, but I think this is going to be a game that everybody needs to be watching through the fourth quarter. I don't think this is one of those games where they jump out. I think this is maybe going to be determined in the last 6 minutes of the game. Not many college football games, unfortunately, very different than the NFL, are won in the last minutes on a field goal. There just doesn't seem to be the talent on the kicker side. But this game is one of those games where you can kind of sit down, watch it in that window that they're playing. They're the 7 p.m. game, so obviously ESPN is thinking the same thing. This is going to be the best game of the week, right? If you look at just purely timing.
I think so, and I think it's just because, Georgia's offense is good, not great. Like, you look at their, some of their skill players, like, they don't have a 1,000-yard receiver. They don't have a 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, Gunnar Stockton's had a good year, but Georgia's defense is good. And I mean, you could easily argue Ole Miss's offense is superior to Georgia's. And I just don't think, let's put it this way, Herbs, I don't think Georgia has the offensive flair to blow out Ole Miss, is why I think they're going to keep it close. And I just think Ole Miss they have a ton of skill. So I'm with you.
Hey guys,
going to be close to the end.
Yeah, how much does the lack of a head coach and the consistency there, does that play any factor in these games, in these playoff games? Opinions?
Well, I will say off the top, that's really hard to answer because head coaching styles are very different. People ask me about Glenn Mason sometimes, and I always described him as a complete CEO of the team, not an X and O's guy, not, he'd jump in sometimes, he'd do head coach things and stuff, but some head coaches operate much more as a CEO. And I think that at this point in the year, as long as, because the assistants have stayed, right? The coordinators are there. I would actually not factor that in that much. It's unusual to see with a playoff team, and so that's maybe a little different. But in situations where coordinators are taking over, you've had the whole season of success, everything's kind of in place. It's just a short-term continuity operation. Now, Lane Kiffin, he was a coordinator at a lot of levels. He might be the type of coach that had his fingers in things more as a head coach. I don't think he was calling plays or anything like that, but my suspicion would be that at this point in the year, I don't think it's a huge factor other than, in this case, it was a distraction because it was kind of a circus, and he's going to LSU, but I'm not sure that's a negative for the players if he's not poaching coaches that are leaving immediately or poaching players that are sitting out and causing that kind of a problem.
Yeah, interesting dynamic in that, like, Lane wanted to coach and Mississippi was like, no thanks. That was really the circus part of it. I mean, it's not surprising Lane Kiffin left, although I don't know. You could argue. I personally, if my personal opinion is that he made a mistake, I would have stayed there. He seems to have found a home, and we were talking about Texas Tech putting themselves on the map and Indiana putting themselves on the map, and I feel like Mississippi can probably do that too. But I've seen a couple of the clips they seem to. I don't recall his name. You guys probably have it there. Is it Jeff Lebby? I think he was one of the coordinators. That's the interim head coach for Mississippi, and just seeing some of the documentaries and footage on some of the various stations, like they seem to have embraced him, which, again, it's just another one of those interesting factors to see, are they going to get behind the coach? And how does that play into the game?
Yeah, and I think I just wanted to. I know we talked about our demographics on this show, but I also know there's a huge faction of bettors that watch this game to get an inside track, and that's one of the big things. So I just wanted to kind of caution folks if they needed to maybe take a pause on their way to Turtle Lake, to say, hey, maybe I don't put so much on that 6-3 game because of that, and just give them all angles. That's all I'm looking for. Trying to be a good guy here on the Audible Angle.
As we try to cover each game, and this one perhaps is one of those that when you really want to break it down, just due to history, defending champ, been there a lot, big time program. This discussion might be a little bit more of a point spread pick'em kind of angle, but Miami, Ohio State, 2 seed, 10 seed. That's a big disparity. I don't know exactly, as we mentioned or alluded to a little bit, the whole playoff selection thing, give or take it. Miami is kind of one of those teams that should have been at Notre Dame, does that first week 0 win, is that enough to matter? And then they go out and win their matchup, and then here we are. Are they a team that, of course, is there upset? Are we smelling any sort of upset sauce here, or is it simply you're trying to figure out if 9.5 points, or you find something a little juicier than that out there? Is that how this game breaks down? Basically, a point spread decision.
Go ahead, Drew.
Go ahead, Herbie.
Druzy.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think Ohio State's the better team. I think you'd almost, I don't want to say you'd be crazy not to pick them, but they do seem like the obvious choice. But if you want to get into spreads, I do think 9.5, and I don't know, depending upon what platform you're on, if you could find a 10, it feels like that would be a great number, because I just think Miami's going to try running the ball. They can grind it down like they did against Texas A&M. It wasn't a pretty first half. Didn't help that the wind was blowing 50 miles an hour at Kyle Field in Texas A&M, which made for some ugly offense. But like, you could tell by the end of the game, Mark Fletcher, the running back for Miami, they're just grinding it out. It wasn't pretty in the first half, but the second half started finding room. And I think that's what they're going to try. I mean, you just got to try to keep Ohio State's offense off the field. So it could be a little bit of a grind out. Also, I'm picking Ohio State, and I'm going to give Miami a bunch of props. But Miami's defensive line is legit. Like, they got like 3 guys that have 7 or 8 sacks. Ruben Diaz. I forget the other one. Ahmad Mesidor, Akeem Mesidor. I think they have some athletes, and it's like, if you can make Julian Sand a little uncomfortable, it could be a longer day for him. I still like Ohio State just because Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Bo Jackson.
I don't know about you guys, but that Big Ten championship game still sticks in my brain, and I watched that game, and Ohio State didn't look good. And I don't know if that's a reflection more on Ohio State, or maybe it's Cignetti and the boys in Indiana. Maybe they are the real deal, and I'm gonna be. You'll hear from me here when we get to that game. But I'll be honest. This Miami team arguably beat one of the dark horses and the favorite in the first round. Texas A&M was the real deal. Texas A&M's coming from a conference. They had some good wins. They had a great resume, great team, good defense, and they grinded it and got the W. So they've got the flash that they need. To your point, Druzy, they do have a defensive line that can slow anybody down, and I know their secondary and such is just as good behind them. So this is a game I'm intrigued by as well. I think Miami has a chance. I think Miami certainly, I would take the points and take Miami there. But you never know with Ohio State, right? Like they've been there before. They are the defending champions, right? So we've got to give them a little bit of props there. They're coming in here. You've got to beat the best to be the best, and they're the best team, even though they're only the 2 seed. So nice game here. Very different styles to potentially. I mean, there's a lot of guys from Miami that probably could be playing for Ohio State and vice versa because they're big-time programs. I just, for one, I'll leave it at this. I, for one, enjoy seeing Miami back in the prominence. I mean, it's good for college football if Miami, Florida is playing in these big games. It's good for us to watch. Maybe not good for compliance officers across the country, but it is good for anything else.
Ohio State gave up 5 sacks against Indiana, and I find some of these stats and analytics a little challenging in college football because there are so many teams and to factor in who they're playing every week. But by most accounts, Miami's defense and specifically their pass rush is a significant jump up from Indiana's. So you can definitely envision a game where if Ohio State gets into a situation where they got to keep passing the ball to stay, to keep the chains moving, and Miami can get some stops and make them a little uncomfortable, they're going to be able to get to say and at least pressure them, get sacks, and sacks are big plays, especially if they're on third down and lead to a punt. So it's not extremely far-fetched to think that Miami defense can even outperform the Indiana defense that we saw in the championship game. I don't know if they have all of the consistency that they need, but I would also add, I always think college sports are a big division between that and the pros is it's in a more emotional game. There's more emotional swings, and you don't want to underestimate how these guys feel. And even though they won their first matchup, they're still carrying that idea that people don't think they're supposed to be here. And hey, they're all 4 or 5 star recruits too. There's a lot of good players. Ohio State probably has the edge on depth and things like that, but Miami isn't a group of 5 school or whatever they call James Madison and Tulane. It's not that situation at all.
A lot of 5-star guys on both sides. In fact, I didn't write down very many stats today, but you guys segued it perfectly. Ohio State's defense, which is, top 2, top 3, right? 33 sacks this year. Miami of Florida, 41. Just to put that in perspective. So, there you go.
Yeah, we saw Sayin not play well in the Big Ten because he was pressured. Now, I think he showed a lot of moxie in that game for coming back after he got smoked on the first series. I mean, he literally got dead, and then he came back, but so there's that. I think that this is going to be a fun game to see who grabs the momentum, and to your point, Dilly, it is an emotional game, and Miami will make it an emotional game.
What do you guys think about, you mentioned it, Herbs, Julian Sayin, first time on this stage? I mean, Carson Beck, whether you like him or not, and a lot of people don't, but he has played in big games before. Was thinking about that too. I don't know, how much does that play into it?
Can I do Herbs? Let me grab this quick. Druzy, I'm the host, and Herbs is the co-host. You're the expert. So just a point of clarification. I know we're doing it in the middle of the show, but when we ask a question, you're the guy we brought in. You answer first. So that's point 1. You answer first, and you keep your mouth shut when we're talking. I see you starting to talk. You answer the question first. We tell you whether or not your answer sucks. Number 2, we ask the questions around here, bud. Now, Herbs, I'd like to ask you a question. And that question is Druzy's question. Okay, go ahead.
I think that is a good point. I do think that there's something to be said in big games, and I think it goes right back to my previous point that I just made. Saying what that Big Ten championship is a national championship feel. If you watch that game was certainly a national championship feel, and he didn't play great. So there is something about the lights that get brighter. There's something to be said that I've been there before and act like you've been there before. He hasn't. Beck has. I mean, I don't know how many years he's been playing for Georgia. It feels like this is his 7th year that he's been playing for Georgia, only because Georgia's always been in the spotlight. So I'm sure he's not academically ineligible. So let's not start a conspiracy theory here, start stretching that out. But boy, I think there's a lot of things that say that this game's going to be closer than what that spread says. And I like that angle, and maybe there's some money that says maybe we put some money on that as well.
Yeah, you don't want to leave any money on the table, and you don't want to miss any picks in picks leagues. Any listeners in our very legal, just for fun picks league, we will be on Miami and taking the 9.5 points. Now, I wish in a picks league the lines lock. Some listeners get curious when they hear something like a picks league. They lock early in the week, so sometimes you get screwy lines. I would be, slamming money down anywhere if you could find 10.5. Unfortunately, saying sometimes it is a point or 2 off on some of these games. So if Druzy said 10, 10.5 feels like you'd go take out a irresponsible loan if you needed to get some money on it. That's how good I feel about 10.5, and I still question 9.5 because that's a point at which, towards the end of a game, if it gets a little away from you, then you get into a scenario where teams aren't kicking a field goal where they normally would because they're down a little bit more, so they got to go for touchdowns and vice versa, and going for it on 4th down. You never know what's going to happen at the end of the game. But I think as you watch the first 3 quarters, it'll be apparent that taking the points was probably the right call, and then we'll see what factors jump in down that stretch as the pressure mounts. If it's backdoor action, cover for either team, definitely in play there.
To your point, Dilly, since we've been talking about this game specifically, I'm looking at the line. When we first started talking about this, it was 8.5. It is now currently 7.5 on ESPN. So it's dropped. I mean, obviously, there's another point to be said. Maybe we underestimate the reach that Audible Angle has. I didn't know we were live, but we do have a big audience out there. So maybe we're affecting that line a little bit, which wouldn't surprise me. I mean, we do have one of the best experts in the Midwest with us today. Dilly and I, arguably some of the prettiest faces in the Midwest as well.
Absolutely.
Those are factors. But to your point, it's down to 7.5 on ESPN.
It is a reminder that we have to hustle a little bit. So, our live viewers who pay a premium, and if just send us a comment or a message if you want to pay that premium, so you get to come right into the recording studio, watch it live. YouTube, it's not quite live. We'll get it up pretty quick. In any case, we want to get our listeners moving on the final matchup so they can get to their legal betting outlets and get that money down before Vegas and the general public reacts. And that's Bama, Indiana. Herbs, I know you got a soft spot for Indiana. Everybody probably has some still psychological residue thinking about Alabama and thinking of a team that you can just trust in these spots to not lay a complete egg. I will say, in the first round, they wanted to lay an egg. They tried to lay an egg. They laid an egg. And then their opponent, who the hell did they play? You're the expert, Jersey. Who did they play?
Which team are we talking about?
Oklahoma.
In the last round of the playoffs? Yeah, Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma. Sorry, I had a little blackout there. Weird stuff happens, including a punter randomly dropping the ball to the turf. He didn't get a kick blocked. He didn't get it knocked away. The rush wasn't there. He just kind of spaced out like he's in warm-ups, dropping the ball on the sideline or something. So it was, and it is 2 weeks ago. So cut us a little slack. 2 weeks between these games. Alabama did have to get a little of that Chicago Bears miraculous miracle after miracle in order to even get back in that game. So which Alabama are we going to see? Is it residue of Nick Saban, or have these guys kind of been shaky all year as a team that we weren't even sure going to be in the playoffs, and they get what they deserve from Cignetti and the boys?
Yeah, and also don't forget John Mateer throwing the ball directly to one of the Alabama defensive backs he's a great quarterback, but one of the worst throws I've ever seen. And I think those were back-to-back possessions, Dilly, and it went from 17-0 to 17-17, and then Alabama took it from there. But so weird to say for the first time maybe ever. Indiana's just the better team. Like, they have better athletes. They're probably better at most positions. Do think Alabama might hang around for a little bit, but it sounds like Irby likes Indiana. I like Indiana too. Like, I just think they check the boxes. Quarterback, check. 2 stud wide receivers, Omar Cooper, Elijah Surratt. I think they have 12 and 11 touchdowns respectively. And what surprised me against the game against Ohio State that Herbs brought up earlier, I was surprised at how good Indiana's defense is. Like, they have a couple guys on the defensive line, and then one of their defensive backs, Lewis Moore, 6 interceptions this year from the safety position. I think, Dilly, to your point, Alabama always has a little bit of moxie. I think they'll play hard. I'll give them credit for coming back against Oklahoma. I would have picked Oklahoma in that game. I did pick Oklahoma in that game. And so I think just that the aura of Alabama to a certain extent, but I don't think Indiana cares because I just think they're better.
Ooh, Nelly, guys. Now, this is a Cignetti special. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Right now, out of the four games that we're going to be watching, this is the most disrespected number 1 seed I have ever seen. We've got to question some of the folks in Vegas to only be saying that Indiana, the undefeated Indiana, who took down the defending national champion, that dismantled the defending national champion in the Big Ten championship, sliced through the Big Ten like it's warm Swiss cheese, if you will. And now to say, and Signetti, my friend, we had a conversation earlier this week, to say that Indiana is only favored by a touchdown is a travesty. It's something that everybody listening to the show needs to take whatever is in your 401k, put it on Indiana, and live a good life. You heard it here first. This is a travesty, Drew. Dilly, let's wake up and see greatness. Druzy, you hit it right. You hit it right. They're better. So please don't make the mistake in the semifinal when Indiana strolls into the next round with that Signetti swagger. That's a C and an S, but it sounds the same. I'm taking Indiana right to
Quick disclaimer. Point spread picks do not represent financial advice on this program. Please proceed with caution and stay within your safe budgetary limits. That being said, we've got some picks here that it sounds like you might want to talk to at the very least. Maybe you don't go 401k, but maybe you sit down your wife, your husband, your kids, and you let them know we're going to be pinching pennies for a couple days here because we're putting it on the games, on our picks, audible angle picks. Don't get crazy. Sell a car. Sell your third or fourth vehicle that you don't have a driver for, and then put that on apparently Indiana and possibly Miami. Now, you might have already missed the boat on Miami, so don't get crazy there. But if you find 6.5 on Indiana, drive to Turtle Lake, Wisconsin, make a legal bet.
Hey, here's the deal, guys. There hasn't been a sure thing since Bob Knight in 75 and 76 was coaching the Hoosiers. There hasn't been a sure thing. Bob Knight went 32-0 with his Hoosiers, won the national championship. Last time somebody's gone undefeated, I believe. And I don't care if there was somebody that went undefeated. Druzy, you're going to fact check me on that, I'm sure. But here's the deal. Hoosier fans, you've got the real deal down there in Indiana. Not exactly sure where this game is being played, but boy, oh boy, Signetti and the boys. They got them playing good ball, both sides of the football. Liking it.
I do like the fact that Herbs wants people to take out their 401ks. Dilly didn't like it, and then, but was the guy who 10 minutes ago told you to take out an irresponsible loan for one of the other games.
For a point spread that no longer exists.
For a point spread that has already moved.
It's by the way, this game is being played in the Rose Bowl, Pasadena, California.
That has Indiana. Indiana wins this game. Like they haven't been in the Rose Bowl for 58 years.
About it. Seriously, Druzy, I'm sending you money. Can you get to Turtle Lake?
I tell you what, I am not joking, but I got nothing going on tomorrow morning, and Turtle Lake is right across the border. So we'll talk, brother.
Herbs, by the way, Druzy's an hour and a half. We'll just call it an hour and a half from Turtle Lake because he likes to take different routes and drive past some cornfields and say, hey, there's the deer bar. Stop there. And, oh, it's not open. Well, we'll stop on the way home. Herbs, you're what, 17, 11 minutes from Oneida Casino, another legal sports book in the state of Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Maybe you should be placing for Druzy. Not that I don't know if that's legal, so don't do anything illegal. But
right,
it's actually a 7-minute drive, which matches the spread that these prognosticators are given. This is unbelievable. When I saw that, it's unbelievable. And there's got to be money. This line has got to get less. Like it's got to raise, right? Like there's got to be so much money being put on Indiana on this thing. Who's Kalen DeBoer compared to Signetti? It's nothing against. It's crazy to me. It's crazy.
And well, if it's anything like the Miami game, it'll be -9 before we're done talking here. So with all the listeners cashing their 401ks.
I don't know if you can cash your 401k on New Year's Eve either, or New Year's Day. That could
be some
be
tax
a timing
implications
issue.
for that. Yeah.
I will say quickly that the percentage of money, and this kind of is a pretty public versus sharp matchup here. 73% of the bets are actually on Alabama. Now, this resource that I'm using doesn't necessarily have every wager made in the history of the universe. But their sources are 73% of bets on Alabama on the spread. We're talking
Yeah,
spread.
it's got to be the cover. Yeah.
65% of the money is on Indiana. So that tells you there's a lot more small casual bettors on Alabama and a little bit more big time money flowing in from fewer people on Indiana to cover, whether it's 6.5 or 7. It's been around there for a while now. So like Druzy said, maybe not much longer. But that's where it's been lately. I'll go back and check on our Miami friends. Although, actually, I'm not going to check on that because another disclaimer to our listeners, when you're using information like that, it's hard to decipher when that money came in. So that Miami line is moving, and you might say, oh, God, all the big money came in on Miami. Shit, that might have been at 10.5 3 days ago before you were paying attention. And now at 7.5, it all comes back, and they try to middle it, hope for an 8-point game. Any other thoughts? Actually, Jersey, I did have a question for you, and everybody's not going to like this one. Just as a practice of a thought exercise, paint a picture for how Alabama even is able to stay in it. Is there a paint picture, anything that other than Indiana comes out, blows their feet off themselves, turns the ball over 4 times? Is there is there a run game? Is there anything that Alabama can say, we think we're good enough here to beat them here, and we're going to pound that part of the game?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think you just said it, Dilly. They need like what happened against Oklahoma, right? Mendoza has an awful game. They put the ball on the ground a couple times, blocked kick, kick return for Alabama, something like that, because I was looking at a little bit of the numbers earlier today. Alabama is so one-dimensional. Jam Miller's their starting running back. Granted, he's been hurt a lot of the year. He has 500 yards. They just don't run the ball very good, and I think if Alabama's one-dimensional and Simpson's going to throw it around, which I feel like he's going to have to anyway, it's just, Indiana's going to be able to count on a consistent pass rush and be aggressive. So to your point, Alabama's going to have to find a way to force turnovers or make crazy things happen, because if this is just a possession-for-possession game, I'm with Herbs. I think Indiana takes care of business.
Who in their right mind would ever thought they'd be tuning in? Think back to 2022. Would you ever think you're tuning into the Audible angle and hearing experts basically tell you Alabama has, a chip in a chair, a puncher's chance, miracles happen? I would have not expected that conversation to be taking place when we were working on our big money deals to get the podcast off the ground.
I'm impressed, Dilly, with your chip in a chair, which is from the latest episode of Packers Corner. They kind of went through the chip in a chair. I'm not sure if that's a comment that's always in your brain, but they talked about that last night. That's why they look.
Oh, I didn't catch up on Packers Corner. We do love Packers Corner, and we love a lot of other podcasts, and wish and hope and know that they love us, but it's hard for them. They know they're going to hemorrhage viewers and subscribers as soon as, the Audible angle touches their tongue. So, no offense taken from, Pack-A-Day Podcast or, Pat McAfee. We know those guys can't really mention us because it's, they're putting themselves on the line if they do.
Scary. It's scary.
Do you have anything? We'll do a quick look ahead because scheduling-wise, it's always hard to predict when exactly we'll be able to get on. And then we're going to wrap with a couple other items, perhaps not college football playoff related. Do you have a favorite right now? And it sounds like for a lot of the 2 out of 3 of us, and probably 3 out of 3, other than something obvious like Indiana, but include them. Do you see anybody else as a favorite out of what we expect to be the Final Four teams? Who else has a potential to really make a stink out of this?
It feels like to me, fellas, it feels like we're headed for, not to pick chalk and be boring, but I just think Ohio State and Indiana are that good. But to answer your specific question, Dilly, I guess maybe I'll go back to my original game. I just seem to like Texas Tech. I don't know why. I just think they've been underestimated all year when you look at some of the spreads that they've gotten all year, and just some of the just when you look at their margin of victory and what they've been able to do. I think, you know, if Texas Tech wins, and we obviously know Indiana is a guarantee at this point, because Herbs and I are right. That would be an interesting matchup. Like I'd love to see that game. That would be a great game. But
I'm not coming off of my Indiana pick, but I will tell you, I'm not coming off of it. I mean, it's going to take a heavy push, which I'm not. I know I'm not getting from Rashawn Gary, but the heavy push, I am concerned. I am concerned about Texas Tech Indiana semifinal game. I will tell you that that's got my hackles up. I do think that probably the same line should be there if it is Texas Tech, maybe a little better for Indiana. But that game concerns me just because the different style in the different game. Like that's a concerning game. But I think another game I want to see, Dilly, is that 2-3, that Georgia Ohio State, because I think Georgia's got some magic. So I think we are headed towards chalk into the semifinals, but there is some intriguing games, and we're going to have Drew back on. We'll talk about it again next week, and as they get closer to those January 8th and 9th games that are the semifinals. Boy, there's some intriguing stuff there. Really looking forward to how this stuff shakes out. First game is tonight, obviously. We're doing this on Wednesday. I think there's a 7:00 game tonight, and then there's the rest of
they're
them.
all three tomorrow. Yeah, I think it's an 11, right? Or a noon, 4 and 7 or something like that. So
Yeah.
great football tomorrow.
Yep. And then I think that other game, Miami Ohio State's got its own little slot tonight.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess I'd be remiss as I think back to the Kirk Signetti discussion we've had here in the past, and I brought up Kirby Smart. I feel like we barely talked about Georgia. That whole conversation was mainly about Ole Miss, and I do think Ole Miss is very live in that game. But I have a sneaking suspicion that come the championship game, we might be saying, it's kind of same old Georgia. Talk about a team that's been consistently in the mix and gotten across the finish line as well. I think there's something to be said for that. Let's not forget about Georgia. They carry the G. It's wrong colors, but it's a powerful deal.
If ever there was an under the radar Georgia season, usually they're like 1 or 2, and you feel like they're the talk of it just because they have been for 4 or 5 years because of Kirby Smart. But you're right, Dilly. They're probably actually loving their spot right now. They're kind of laying low. Everyone talking about Indiana and Ohio State and the 4-5 matchup with Texas Tech and Oregon, but would not surprise me to see Georgia make a deep run for sure.
For sure. I wouldn't be surprised to see Indiana, Georgia on the 19th for that championship game. I agree.
Now, Herbs, you had an outside of college football topic you wanted to a topic or two you wanted to address with Druzy, and we're under an hour, so we got time.
Yeah, Drew, I'm looking for I know you bleed purple. Unfortunately, I still do feel bad for you. It's a lifelong sentence that you've gotten so far.
100%.
We tried to get you. You did spend 5 strong years in Green Bay. This is a Green Bay men's soccer alumni that we're speaking with today. He didn't change his mind then. That was during a Super Bowl season, by the way. That was a Super Bowl season for the Packers. I want to get a look, and we talked obviously on the episode that aired this morning. We talked about that game for about 13 and a half seconds, which I believe is what it deserves. But yes. I want to get a look at kind of maybe a 30-second to a minute look of what does Minnesota Viking fan look at this game, and does it matter if you beat the Packers, or does nobody really care there either?
I get the feeling nobody cares. I think the only reason this game would matter at all is if J.J. McCarthy actually plays, if he's actually healthy, which you and I were talking about that a little bit earlier, Herbs. And if he's not, there's always a little bit of a bragging rights, but the luster is, to me, it's already gone with both teams, kind of with nothing to play for. Obviously, you guys got bigger fish to fry, and honestly, if I have to watch Max Brosmer for another game, Herbs, I will meet you at Oneida Bingo and Casino on Monday morning and take off of work because I can't muster it again. He might be the worst quarterback in the history of the NFL, and that is not an exaggeration.
And you're the one wearing the M on your shoulder, on your chest there, man. So
It's for Dilly. It's the Gophers, which is equally as torturous as it is being a Vikings fan or any of the four major sports here, for that matter. But yes, I've probably already spoken to your point, Herbs. That's probably all the talk that the Vikings need at this point.
Speaking of Minnesota University athletics, I have noticed this is a smaller level sport, but Minnesota wrestling has been stealing a lot of four-time state champs out of the Wisconsin area, and for whatever reason, there's not a rich history of wrestling over in Minnesota at your university over there, but they've got a lot of good Wisconsin wrestlers, and they ain't going to Wisconsin. It's concerning.
That's true. I think Coy Hopke, heavyweight 285, is from Amory, Wisconsin. I think Charlie Millard is from, I think Marshfield must have a pretty good program, it seems like, every year. We do have some kids. I would disagree with you on not having a rich history. I know lately it's been Penn State, pretty much, in Iowa, and a little bit Ohio State, but like Minnesota's had some pretty impressive wrestlers, probably going back more like 10 or 15 years. But we're in a little bit of a lull right now. It's kind of hard to get to the level of Penn State and Iowa at this point. Heavyweight you.
We had a little bit of a scandalous end to our last round of last golden era with some shenanigans, some illicit sales, maybe off the record sales going on around campus. Maybe some of the coaching staff knew or didn't know. It was a little bit of a thing. It's kind of a Minnesota thing. Like, hey, this team's pretty good. We're all having a good time. Let's investigate ourselves and destroy our own team.
Like the last time the basketball team made the Final Four. We can get it done. It's just you got to go a little bit.
Just for our fans, and we're going back to the well here a little bit, and this is a teaser. This is a trailer for our off-season discussion. But at least for you, as a fan and as an expert, and a gambling expert, and a Division I college athlete, all these accolades, all this information stored inside your mind. The Minnesota Vikings lost 4 in a row, looked horrible. People on the airwaves, the old school radio airwaves, and the blogosphere, it started to creep in to the conscience of people. Is KOC on the hot seat? Is Quezzy on the hot seat at all? And then you string off 4 wins. Did you ever get to a point where you started to seriously think as a fan that this whole regime, if it looks like it did 4 more games as that 4-game losing streak looked, and I'll tell you what, they weren't winning much before. They had a win against Detroit, which was awesome. But, and were you feeling that? And did, this little uptick in the last 4 games, did that change it, or were you just flatlined the whole way?
Yeah, it was definitely a topic of discussion in town here, Dilly, at various points during the year. Like, to your point, like, you lose 2 and then everyone, it's a knee-jerk league. Personally, if you're going to ask me, I like KOC. I think he's a solid coach. He does make some poor decisions, but I think overall, like, he's a young coach. He'll continue to get better. He does seem to have some solid offensive knowledge. Not saying he's perfect, but I do have an issue with our general manager, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who just, I think, has, and we've talked about this, I talked about this with both you guys, like, he's bungled the quarterback situation. We went from a quarterback room of J.J. McCarthy, Daniel Jones, and Sam Darnold to Max Brosmer and Sam Howell, I think, in the span of a year. And the drafts have been atrocious. If you look back over the last 3 drafts, I mean, we have like 1 or 2 guys that have played more than a handful of snaps, and you just can't sustain that. I mean, I'll give you guys props. one of the reasons I think the Packers are competitive every year is they draft well, they don't dip into free agency, and you got to build from within when those guys are on their rookie contracts and they're cheaper, and you develop them and you just continue to replenish your system like that. That's how you're consistently good. The Vikings have been good the last couple of years. We've dipped into free agency, but that is a Band-Aid. It is not sustainable. Now we're going to have cap issues. McCarthy's already going to be in his third year. When does he need an extension, or do we have to do this all over again? And so do have an issue with the general manager. I'm okay with the coach, but it ebbs and flows, Dilly. It goes, it's interesting. It's week to week. Like you guys probably having the same discussion with Matt LaFleur, who's, you look at his record compared to, the first, whatever, whatever 50, 60-year games, and it's pretty impressive, but I'm sure it's just always knee jerk.
Yeah, don't get Herb started. Look at that face.
I'm not going to touch it. Thanks for the bait, but I'm not taking it. I'm not taking it.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying that's what I've heard. I don't have any.
Yep, that's been said. It was said a million times since week 10. I've been saying it. What I do want to tell you, Drew, and I'm sure you guys have been watching the ticker as we have this episode here.
That's right.
Speaking of free agents, does anybody want to break? Dilly, do you have any news to break on the Packers?
Well, Herbs, I had to do this last night on what you called a inside zone versus a draw. Technically not a free agent. This is a waiver acquisition. So on waivers, Trayvon Diggs to the Green Bay Packers. It's official. I would I'll give my thoughts first. How about that? I wouldn't get too excited. He hadn't been playing. He has played good football at points in his career. It hasn't been very recently. The caveat I will say is, hey, we had a guy go down season ender, and Nate Hobbs. I don't know if this is really news. It looks like he's out for the year too. So we had 2 cornerbacks go down. So anybody that tries to preach too much negativity on this acquisition, look, we kind of had no choice. He's at least a veteran. He has had moments, and in the history of the NFL, especially at cornerback. Cornerback is one of those positions where guys have come back for a little stretch, especially when they think they can earn another big contract, and all of a sudden they stick their nose in there a little harder. They play a little harder. We have the de facto bye week coming up, so he's got a week and a half, 2 weeks to get up to speed. I'll be a little – it's not game-changing. It's not amazing unless you factor in the fact that we basically had 2 healthy outside cornerbacks and some practice squad guys and a converted wide receiver. So in that perspective, you get a veteran who's played some football, we'll take him. Your thoughts, Herbs?
Yeah, here's the deal, guys. We can upgrade very quickly at that position by adding him. So it was a smart choice. It was a very financially fiscal choice, to your point earlier, Drew. There wasn't a lot of money. I think we're going to have to cover $500K for the rest of the season, something minute like that. And when you have Valentine and you've got Nixon, and Valentine was uninterested in I wouldn't doubt in that first playoff game that Valentine is not in the starting lineup anymore because of what he was shown in that last game. Does he show flashes? Sure. But we need a veteran presence, to your point, Dilly, that'll stick his nose in there and play hard. I mean, that's the bottom line. Drew, I'm interested in hearing your unbiased. I think this is a really good move for the reasons you said, Dilly, and also for the reasons of why. Can it be any worse? It cannot be any worse. It's another human body that's better. I mean, the only worst decision that they could make is putting Eric Urban, Ryan Andrews, or Jim Dillenberg at cornerback. That is the only 3 choices they could have made that could have downgraded what they have. Anything else that had a pro experience is a good choice. I mean, Al Harris is coaching. I see him coaching. I think he's on the Seattle sidelines. He's their defensive back coach. Al Harris, bring him in. He looked good. He looked ready to play. I'll take Trayvon Diggs. Druzy, what do you say?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, low risk, high reward, right? I mean, if you can afford it, you're not out anything. And I mean, and for the most part, I recall it's mostly been injuries, right? Like he was playing awesome like 3 or 4 years ago, right? And then I think he had an ACL, and then he had like another relatively significant injury. And I mean, he's been hurt. Why not bring him in? It can't hurt. And if anything, to me, you immerse him in the culture. He's going to run into Micah Parsons. He's going to run into Rashawn Gary, and he might go, hey, this looks like a place, I don't know what the terms of the contract are, but if anything, it opens the door for you to bring him back next year at a prove-it deal or something relatively cheap, and you go from there. I mean, I think it's a good move just because it just doesn't carry any risk. At this point, you guys that's your biggest hurdle right now is your injuries. So why not bring in a potential depth piece or even just someone who helps you in the film room? Why not?
Druzy, thanks for joining us. Glad we did the equipment test. Everything worked pretty good as far as we can tell at this point. We're looking forward to having you back. We'll probably get you back for the next round of the playoffs, college. And I went with Coach Roberts. At some point, we're going to transition into World Cup previews. And, we only have, what is it? How many teams are in it? 48? We only got 48 teams to go through. Got to get started at some point.
The entire world's in.
Well, plus the playoff games to get in. So really, there's about 60 teams to break down.
Right. So looking forward to the 5-hour show.
Drew, your debut was stellar. The homework could tell. And I mean, we get comments all the time. Boy, you guys do your homework.
I bet you do. Glad to be on. I had fun. This was great.
Yeah,
it's good to see
you
you.
Have a little better recall than me and Herbs, and that's the type of guest host that we want to have on. Is a guy that has some recall on names and stuff. We're kind of more of a get tough and fast and that kind of stuff. You're like, well, Ahmed. Oh, I'm sorry, Ezekiel Jackson from Southwest Missouri State transferred over to Platteville, and now he's on the Badgers, and his son is whatever. You got a little better recall than we got.
Well, let's be honest, Dilly. You were calling LaFleur Fat LaFleur your last episode. We got a little bit of name calling. We'll mix it in. Don't piss us off because we'll get after you.
I'll tell you what. I know why that happened. It's you glance around and you're looking at yourself. You're looking at yourself in the camera, and you're trying to say Matt LaFleur, and you've been waiting. I'm waiting for Herbs to start talking, and all of a sudden I'm like, fat. It's like I mean Matt. Sorry, that was a good one. All right, boys. We'll see you soon.
See you, boys.